Don't switch your career before watching this video, because we all have certain assumptions that we make about ourselves and our circumstances that can lead to thinking inside the box. And when you're thinking inside the box, you could just find yourself in another career that you dislike just as much as your current one. So this video will guide you through a process to identify and overcome your assumptions and to unlock fresh perspectives when it comes to your next career. So your assumptions may be leading to inside the box thinking, and you may be thinking, well, that's not so bad because sometimes constraints and limitations lead to more creative solutions. But that's not the type of inside the box thinking we're talking about today. I'm talking about the type of thinking that leads to very unimaginative solutions and ultimately solutions that may land you in a job that is different but very similar to the one that you already dislike. And the way the assumptions work is you may be seeing the situation in a very specific way, and you may be thinking about it in a very specific way and asking certain questions about how to solve the problem. And what can happen here is your assumptions can lead to asking the wrong questions. You may be trying to solve the wrong problem when it comes to fixing your career and finding your next career path. So the solution here is to become aware of your assumptions so that you can make sure that you are thinking outside of the box. And I want to illustrate this with my own example of all of the ways that I was thinking inside the box as I was exploring my own career change over the last few years. So I was an engineer for the last decade and recently made the switch to becoming self-employed. And so if we go all the way back to 2016, this is when I first started to realize that something was off and I knew that something needed to change, but I wasn't 100% sure exactly what was going on. And the assumption that I had at that time was that I was an engineer and I was going to continue to be an engineer. And so the problem that I thought I had at this time was that I just wasn't enjoying the work and that I needed to find a way to do more of the work that I would really enjoy. And so the solution that I had started to come up with at that time was to get a master's degree in an area that I was more interested in so that I could kind of pivot my career, just get this degree and get a little bit more qualifications in the area that I would enjoy more. And so at this time, I was really in the engineer box. I was very much like, I'm an engineer and I'm going to keep working as an engineer, and I just need to find a way to kind of make the best out of this situation. And time went on and I kind of backed away from this idea of getting an engineering master's, and I had started to look around at the multidisciplinary teams that I was working on. I worked with a lot of different professions in kind of the civil engineering realm. I worked with planners, urban designers, I worked with GIS technologists. And so I started to see their contribution to projects, and I was thinking to myself, their contribution seems a lot more aligned with me. The work that they do seems more fun and less stressful than engineering. And I started to think like maybe I would rather have their role on projects than the engineering role. And so I kind of had this assumption of like the grass is greener over there. And so the problem that I was trying to solve at that point was, okay, if I was to get a new degree, a non-engineering degree, what degree would I get? And so I was looking at degree programs like planning and GIS because I did think that they seemed like very cool professions, and I always really liked working with those people, and I kind of felt that I was better suited to those professions than engineering at the time. And so you can see that I was kind of stepping out of the engineer box, but I was still very much in the kind of municipal employee realm or the municipal employee box with my thinking. And along the way, as I was kind of going through this process, it really dawned on me that one of the things I was kind of jealous of my coworkers was for the creative things that they were able to do at work. Like I would work with landscape architects and they would do like mock-ups or whatever. They would draw something very cool. And I was like, I wish I could draw and get paid to draw. And so I was really craving a lot more creativity. I felt very in like the engineering numbers spreadsheet sort of realm. And I was like, I wish I could do more fun artistic things like I see my colleagues doing. And so I was really under the assumption now that, okay, I want to be more creative. And so the problem I was trying to solve for then was, what is a job that I could be more creative in, that I could still be suited for? And for whatever reason, the solution that I came up with at that time was that I thought I should be an architect, because it's kind of something I guess I had always idealized or maybe romanticized in my head growing up. And I was thinking, oh, it's kind of similar to engineering, but it's more creative. And so I had even gone through the whole process of like finding a program and looking at start dates and going to an open house. And this was kind of serious. And I was thinking, okay, how can I pull together a portfolio to apply to the program? Like, it was getting pretty serious. And so you can see that I was kind of stepping outside of these, like, the box of the municipal employee careers that I could see in my everyday life. And I was now starting to explore kind of the broader world of architecture, but I was still within this kind of city builder realm box. And somewhere along the line, through this whole process of like really starting to get serious about potentially applying to an architecture program, it dawned on me one day to ask myself, if I get this degree, what will my life look like? And it became very obvious to me that if I go through the whole process of school and become an architect, my life is going to look different, but very similar to my life right now working as an engineer. If I was to get any of the degrees that I had been considering, it would land me back in a corporate type environment with a 9-to-5 type schedule. And I would probably be working in an office part-time at least. And so, yes, I didn't want to be an engineer anymore, but I also realized, and it became very clear to me, that I didn't want to work in a corporate environment anymore either. And through exploring all of these degrees, I was really trying to solve the wrong problem, because I thought that what I was trying to figure out was, what degree should I get next? But what I really should be solving for is, okay, what do I want my life to look like, and what career could potentially make that happen? And so this realization probably happened around 2018, so 2 years after I first started considering this whole degree path thing. And so it took that long for me to really realize, like, I want to be self-employed, I want to be location independent, I want to have a lot more freedom and flexibility in my life. And so another degree is probably not the right idea for me right now, because a lot of these degrees are just going to land me back in an office. And I think I was really stuck on this path because I had already gotten an undergraduate degree. And so it just felt like, okay, another degree is the solution, and maybe a master's is the solution to kind of pivot my career and make a change so that I can change my life. And so a quick takeaway at this point in my story is, do a check on the assumptions that you may have. Are you making the same assumptions that I was, that you may also need to get another degree or another 2 to 4 year degree in order to make the change and find a career path that you enjoy? And make sure that you're asking yourself, does this align with kind of all of my goals? Like, does this align with the lifestyle that I want and the career path that I want? And another mistake I was making was that I was kind of just looking around at all the careers that I could see within my current frame of reference. And I was trying to fit myself into those roles because it was all I knew. I had been working as an engineer within the kind of civil engineering municipal realm for 10 years. And so it was really like, okay, if I'm going to keep working in this area and I have all this expertise in this area, maybe I just need to be in a different position on the team. If I can not be an engineer, maybe if I could be a planner, then I would feel a lot better about going to work every day. And this is a big mistake, or at least what could be a mistake, that I see a lot in the engineering career path. And this may translate to other career paths as well. You can let me know if you're in another corporate type of career, if you see people doing this. But what I see is a lot of people are not looking outside of their current frame of reference. So a lot of engineers will make the switch into tech. They'll attend like a coding boot camp or something like that to get the skills to now work in tech. And you can see how, yes, it's a different career than engineering, but it's a very similar identity. It doesn't take much to shift your head from being an engineer into someone who builds websites or something like that. and it just uses similar skill sets. And one thing that I would like to encourage you to consider is that, maybe the reason you don't like your job right now and the reason you're considering a change is because you need a real change, not a pivot or a tweak into like a similar but different type of career. Maybe you need to consider that you need a whole-scale change and you need to start fresh. And so takeaway number 2 really quick from my story is, are you asking the right questions? Are you trying to solve the right problem? I was trying to solve the problem of, how do I make engineering work for me? How can I tweak this career and do the type of work that will feel more fulfilling for me? When the real question was, do I still want to be an engineer? Like, is this a path that I want to continue putting time and effort and potentially money through getting a new degree? Do I really want to keep investing in this path and walking down this road? Where will this road take me? And do I want to keep going in that direction? And so this can be a great time to really consider, like, are you asking the right questions when it comes to switching your career? So let's finish off my story of how I really navigated this career change situation. And remember that at this point along my journey, I was aware that I wanted to be self-employed and that I wanted to be location independent. And so what I started to think about this was around 2018, and I really started to consider, okay, if I'm quitting my job, how can I quit my job fast? That was kind of the assumption that I was making, because at this point I was really unhappy at work. It was a struggle to go to work. I found it very draining. And so I just wanted to be able to quit as soon as possible. And so that was kind of my problem statement. How can I take a skill and quit as soon as possible now? And what I started to think about was photography, because I had this hobby of photography for like 10 years at this point. And so I thought it'll be easy to just turn this into a business. It won't take that much time because I already have all the skills and we'll be good to go. And so you can see at this point, I was kind of like out of the degree box or getting another degree or getting another corporate job box. And I was now in this box of like, okay, how can I work with my existing skill set? And so I did start a photography side hustle, and I just realized that I enjoy it as a hobby, but not as a business. And so it was kind of on to the next thing. And at this time, around this same time, I had discovered human design, which is kind of like astrology. It's a system to understand yourself better. And I realized that I was a human design projector, and the system says that projectors are here to help guide people. And so now I had this lens and this assumption of, how do I guide people? Like, I'm here to guide. How can I guide people? And somewhere along the way, I watched a Vanessa Lau video, and she was talking about coaching. And I had never really heard of coaching outside of like sports coaching up until this point. And it hit me like, hey, wait, this sounds like something that I could enjoy. This sounds like a way that I could help people and use this like projector guidance thing. And so that was something that I decided to pursue, was this coaching path. And I really think if I look back at starting this coaching path, that it did check the box of self-employment. It checked the box of location independence. But the one thing where I was kind of keeping myself small in a box was, I really think in hindsight, I was in this box of don't be weird. And because when you're working as an engineer, it's a very kind of like serious and credible job, and people take you seriously, and people are like, oh, that's great that you have that degree. And I felt like if I did anything that was too weird, it would just like clash too much with my kind of former engineering identity. And I still wanted people to take me seriously in the way that they did when I was an engineer. And so I was like a little bit shy about making too much of a big change in my life. And so I really think that like coaching was one way for me to switch my career path and still have it make sense and not be weird, quote unquote. And I think that is something that really limited me. And so fast forward to today, where I have now hopefully kind of stripped off all of these boxes and these limitations that I was putting around myself. And I really like to think now that I'm coming at this from really just the perspective of what do I really want to do? And just to have this really wide open perspective. And maybe in 2 years, I'll look back and I'll be like, you were still in a box, you just couldn't see it. But for right now, everything is feeling like there aren't a lot of like limitations on what I'm doing, which is astrology. And so you can see how in the last one, I really mentioned like, I didn't want to be quote unquote weird. And it definitely would have been too much of a leap to go from engineer to astrologer. But it's been a few years now. And so I've kind of like gotten over that and really worked my way out of all of these assumptions and these boxes that I was putting myself in. And so I'm hoping that now I'm in the kind of do whatever you want box, but I guess we'll see in a couple years how well this ages. But let's get into the steps. So step number 1 is just to take kind of an inventory of where things are at right now. So you're going to do a little bit of journaling or maybe on your laptop or with a piece of pen and paper, and you're going to describe your current situation and the way you're framing it and the way you're thinking about it. And this is going to help you gain some perspective on, where you're at. And so some questions that you can ask yourself, you don't need to go through all of these. These can just help you with the process. But what is your current situation? How are you feeling about your current situation right now? What does your day look like? And how do you feel about what your day currently looks like? How does your day leave you? Do you feel energized or drained and frustrated? What does work look like? What do you enjoy both at work and in your personal life? What do you not enjoy at work and in your personal life? What do you want more of and what do you want less of? And what would you say is missing right now from your life? So really just take a snapshot of your circumstances right now. And I know for my example, like back in 2018 or so, if I had done this exercise, I would say that I knew I wanted to be self-employed. I knew I wanted to be location independent. I wanted to feel more creative. I wanted to have a job that would let me work less than 40 hours a week. And I wanted to just be able to kind of have a lot more freedom and flexibility in my life. So step 2 is becoming aware of your current assumptions. So if you think about kind of the problem you're trying to solve right now, what is that problem? So if you could write a problem statement that would illustrate how you are approaching this career change right now, what would it be? And I gave you a bunch of examples of my own kind of problem statements. First, it was like, what master's program should I get? And then it was like, what different degree should I get? And so write down your own problem statement as you're thinking about it right now. And so as you write down that problem statement and reflect on it, are there any assumptions that you can identify that are inherent in that problem statement? So for example, when I was thinking, what master's degree should I get? What civil engineering master's degree should I get? I had a couple assumptions there. I was assuming that I was just going to stay as an engineer. And I was assuming that I was going to get another degree, that it was just kind of a given that a degree was the next thing that I was supposed to be doing. So step 3, once you've taken a look at your circumstances and how you're thinking about things and you've written out your problem statement, is that you want to check for congruency between these things. So is there congruency between the problem you are trying to solve and what you say you want more of and you want less of in your life? For example, when I was thinking of becoming an architect, it dawned on me that what I wanted was to be more location independent and have my own business. And if I got an architecture degree, then I would be just landing back in a corporate job. So those two things were incongruent, and I really needed to reconsider the approach that I was taking. So step 4, once these things are more apparent to you, you can try to remove the assumptions that you're making and think more outside of the box and reframe your problems so that they align better with the life that you want. And I have a couple tips that may help you with this process. Tip number 1 is just because you like some aspects of your job does not necessarily mean that it is the right job for you. And this was something that created a lot of conflict in me with engineering because I really did enjoy and I was good at certain aspects of this job, but there were also a lot of things that I didn't enjoy about the job. And so it was a lot of conflict because I had been doing this for 10 years and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to give up on this whole career, especially when I did enjoy some parts of it. But ultimately I had to be honest with myself and realize that I wanted to feel a sense of fulfillment and happiness kind of more holistically in my life. I didn't want to have certain things that were really draining and negative with my job and certain things that I enjoyed. And so I knew I could find a way to find more balance and have kind of more holistic happiness across the board. Tip number 2 is if you feel like you have only 1 or 2 options or all of your options are looking very similar to one another, then you probably have some sort of assumption that you're making that's leading to being in a very specific box as far as your idea generation. So when I was really making this assumption around kind of staying in the same career realm, all of my solutions were looking the same, right? It was do I get a master's of engineering or do I get a new planning degree or do I get an architecture degree? These are all different but very similar options. And so that really showed that I still had some assumptions that were leading to a very narrow way of thinking about my career change. Tip number 3 is to start thinking about your identity kind of more holistically, not to keep using that word in this video, but when I was an engineer, I really felt like I had this, I had to have an engineer identity and I had to show up and behave in a way that an engineer would, especially at work. And that led to me hiding kind of parts of myself that I didn't feel fit into the engineer mold, like being into things like astrology and human design, or even just being more creative. I just felt like that's not what was expected of me at work. And so I kind of just kept those things to myself. And so one area that could be a potential gold mine of inspiration and ideas as far as what to do next with your career is the things that you actively hide and keep to yourself at work. You can see now, I was really into human design and astrology. And 3 years ago, when I quit my job, there was no way I was going to be making the switch from civil engineer into astrologer. But now looking back, I can see that those things that I was kind of too shy to share at work or that felt like they didn't really make sense in the context of being an engineer are the things that I was really enjoying and was drawn to, which is ultimately what I'm doing now, which is astrology. And ultimately, if I look at kind of the progression out of all of these different boxes and all of these different ways of thinking about how I should change my career, I really was looking to get to a point where the only question I was asking myself was, what would I really want to be doing right now? And I know that's kind of the hardest question to answer. I think that's subconsciously why we tend to make these assumptions, because it makes it so much easier to answer the question if I'm trying to figure out what master's program should I get? What civil engineering master's program should I pursue? Is a much easier question to answer than what do I really want to be doing right now? It's kind of here's a very narrow range of solutions to this question, whereas what do I want to be doing is kind of the whole wide world is my oyster, which is very difficult. It makes it very difficult to answer these questions. And so I think that's why our brains will try and put all of these assumptions and kind of limitations in place to make it simpler for us to just choose an easier answer. And so you can see that this can be quite the process. It took me years to untangle my situation and finally find a career path that felt like I was heading in the right direction, and it felt finally aligned, and it didn't feel like there was this nagging sense of something just isn't quite right still. And if you're thinking you want a little help jumpstarting this process, I do have a couple astrology readings up available on my website now. You can head to the link in my profile to check that out, and they can really really help you start to understand your core personality, maybe the assumptions that you're making right now. They can also help you understand the patterns that may be playing out repeatedly in your life that are leading to unhappiness, and ultimately help you start to understand how to break those patterns and start moving in a direction that is more fulfilling and aligned with what you came here to do. So if that sounds like it's something that you're interested in, head to my website and check it out. And I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, maybe leave a comment down below if something stuck out to you. And if you're into this type of content, consider subscribing for weekly videos like this. And with that, I will see you next week.